Welcome to my Channel Deep Sleep Mission-DSM. As we begin, I would be delighted if you could share your location in the comments below. It's truly inspiring to witness how far this content travels and to connect with viewers from across the world. The train horn wasn't supposed to sound at 3 in the morning. Not on that track, not on the Pope-Lick trestle. That line had been dead for 12 years. But there it was again. That low, mournful wail cutting through the Kentucky darkness like a knife through old leather. I pressed my face against the cold window of my grandmother's guest room, watching the distant silhouette of that cursed bridge against the moonlit sky. Just the wind, I whispered to myself, has to be the wind. But wind doesn't make metal screech. Wind doesn't make the ground vibrate beneath your feet. And wind definitely doesn't leave footprints on abandoned railroad tracks. If you're listening to this in bed right now, maybe check your window. Make sure nothing's watching you from the darkness. Because what I'm about to tell you, it changed everything I thought I knew about the line between legend and reality. Comment below if you've ever heard sounds that shouldn't exist. I need to know I'm not alone in this. The story begins now. My name is Jordan Walsh. And 3 weeks ago, I inherited something I never wanted. Not money, not jewelry, something far worse. A house. My grandmother's house, to be exact. A weathered Victorian sitting on 20 acres of overgrown Kentucky farmland with a perfect view of the Pope-Lick trestle. She'd lived there alone for the last decade of her life, refusing to move even after what happened to Grandpa. You sure you want to stay here tonight? The estate lawyer, Mr. Hensley, stood in the doorway, keys jangling in his nervous hands. Plenty of motels in Fisherville. I'll be fine. I forced a smile, though something about his tone made my skin prickle. Just need to sort through her things, figure out what to do with the place. He glanced toward the window, toward the trestle. Your grandmother, she was a tough woman, but even she had rules about this place. Maybe I should tell you tomorrow. I was exhausted from the drive from Chicago. Whatever it is, it can wait until tomorrow. The way his face fell, I should have listened. God, I should have listened. After he left, I wandered through the house, each room a museum of memories. Dust motes danced in the fading sunlight, and everywhere I looked, I saw her. In the quilts she'd sewn, in the mason jars lined up on shelves, in the photo albums stacked on every surface. That's when I found it. The journal, hidden in a hollowed-out book on her nightstand, wrapped in plastic like something precious, or dangerous. The leather cover was worn smooth, and the pages inside were filled with her careful handwriting. The first entry was dated just 1 month after Grandpa's death. October 15th, 2014. They say Howard had a heart attack. They found him at the base of the trestle, eyes wide open, staring at something none of us could see. But I know better. I've lived here 43 years. I know what lives in that iron skeleton. I know what calls to people in the night. My hands trembled as I read. Outside, darkness crept across the landscape like spilled ink. The trestle loomed in the distance, a black wound against the purple sky. October 22nd, 2014. It came again last night. 3 a.m., just like always. The horn, the vibration, the feeling of being watched. I kept the curtains closed, followed the rules. Never look, never listen too long. Never, ever go outside when it calls. Rules? What rules? I flipped through pages, my grandmother's fear bleeding through every word. Stories of missing teenagers, of mysterious lights, of something that walked the tracks on foggy nights, neither human nor animal, but something in between. November 3rd, 2014, Mrs. Patterson from 2 farms over broke the rules. Went out to investigate the sounds. They found her 3 days later, standing on the tracks, perfectly still, alive, but empty. She won't say what she saw, just rocks back and forth, humming train songs. A floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, but the hallway was empty, just the old house settling. That's all, just the clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. How had it gotten so late? I'd only been reading for... The train horn split the night like a scream. Long, low, impossible. Every hair on my body stood on end as I crept to the window. Grandmother's journal clutched against my chest. The trestle stood there, skeletal and forbidding, wrapped in wisps of fog that hadn't been there before. And on the tracks, something moved. Too far away to make out clearly, but definitely moving. A shape that seemed to flicker between human and something else, walking with a rhythm that didn't quite match any living thing I'd ever seen. The horn sounded again. Closer. That's when I noticed the rules, written in shaky handwriting on a paper taped to the window frame. 1. When you hear the horn, do not look outside 2. If you look, do not go outside 3. If you go outside, do not approach the tracks. 4. If you approach the tracks, do not climb the trestle. 5. If you climb the trestle... The last line was smeared, unreadable, like she'd been crying when she wrote it. My phone buzzed. 3 a.m. exactly. No caller ID. Against every instinct I answered. Static, then breathing. Wet, ragged breathing that sounded like it was coming through water. Or blood, and underneath it, barely audible, the rhythmic clacking of train wheels on tracks. "Hello?" My voice cracked. The breathing stopped. Then, in a voice that sounded like grinding metal, "Come, play." The line went dead. I stood there, paralyzed, as something scratched at the front door. Long, deliberate scratches, like claws on wood, or metal on metal. The doorknob began to turn. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I barricaded myself in the bedroom with every piece of furniture I could move, clutching a kitchen knife and my grandmother's journal like talismans against the dark. The scratching continued until dawn, sometimes at the door, sometimes at the windows, always stopping just before I could gather the courage to look. When sunlight finally broke through the curtains, I nearly cried with relief. The front door bore deep gouges in the wood. 4 parallel lines over and over, like something had been trying to claw its way inside, but it was the footprints that made my blood run cold. They led from the direction of the trestle to my door, but they weren't human footprints. They weren't animal prints either. They were wrong. Too long, too deep, and they ended at my threshold like whatever made them couldn't cross. I needed answers. The Fisherville Library was a converted barn that smelled like old paper and secrets. Mrs. Chen, the librarian, looked up from her desk with eyes that seemed to see too much. "You're the Walsh girl," she said. It wasn't a question. "Staying at your grandmother's place." Yes. I wanted to research the Pope Lick trestle, the history. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Which history you want, honey? The official one, or the one people whisper about when they think no one's listening?" "Both." She studied me for a long moment, then disappeared into the back room. She returned with a box of yellowed newspapers and faded photographs. "Official history first," she said, spreading the papers across the table. "Pope Lick Trestle. Built in 1915. 772 feet long, 90 feet high. Active freight line until 2012 when Norfolk Southern abandoned it after incidents." Incidents? She tapped a newspaper from 2012. The headline read, "Third engineer dies on Pope Lick line. Company cites mechanical failures. 3 engineers in 6 months, all heart attacks, all found with the same expression." She shuddered. Pure terror, like they'd seen something that shouldn't exist. I thought of Grandpa, found at the base of the trestle with wide, staring eyes. "And the unofficial history?" Mrs. Chen glanced around the empty library, then leaned closer. Stories go back further than the trestle itself. Indigenous peoples avoided that valley, called it the place where things cross over. When the railroad came through, workers started disappearing. They'd hear things at night, see things. Some said it was a creature, half man, half goat. Others said it was something worse. She showed me a photograph from 1918. Workers posing by the newly completed trestle, but in the background, barely visible in the shadows beneath the bridge. "Jesus," I breathed. "You see it too?" She nodded grimly. "That shadow that doesn't match anything casting it. That face that isn't quite a face. What is it?" Nobody knows for sure, but the deaths started right after construction. Teenagers mostly. Always trying to cross the trestle on a dare. Always found at the bottom. And always after someone heard the horn. But there's no train, no. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. There's no train. But something uses that horn, something that's been there long before the tracks were laid. The trestle just gave it structure. A way to hunt. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Don't answer that," Mrs. Chen said sharply. But I already had. Static filled my ear, then that wet breathing again, and a voice like rusted metal. "Tonight, you come, or I come for you." The line went dead. Mrs. Chen's face had gone pale. "It knows you now," she whispered. "Your grandmother kept it at bay for years, followed the rules, made her bargains, but now she's gone, and you're here, and it's hungry." "Bargains? What bargains?" She was already backing away. "I've said too much. Just, whatever you do, don't go to the trestle, don't break the rules, and whatever calls to you tonight, don't listen." But as I drove back to the house, her warnings felt hollow, because I could feel it, that pull, like invisible threads connecting me to that rusted iron monument, like something in my blood recognized whatever waited there. The sun was setting as I pulled into the driveway. In the dying light, I could see fresh scratches on every window, deeper than before, more desperate, and on the door, carved in wood, 4 words that made my soul freeze. "No more rules tonight." I tried to leave, God knows I tried, packed my bags, threw them in the car, started the engine, and nothing. The car was dead. Not just the battery, everything. Like something had drained every drop of electricity from it. My phone was next, fully charged one moment, completely dead the next. The landline had been cut. The wires hung from the pole like party streamers, swaying in a wind I couldn't feel. I was trapped. As darkness fell, I prepared. Every light in the house blazing. Every door locked, windows barricaded. I sat in the living room with grandmother's journal, reading by lamplight, trying to understand. December 1st, 2014. The Shepherd. That's what the old-timers call it. The shepherd of the tracks. It's not evil exactly, it's hungry, always hungry. It feeds on fear, on that moment when terror becomes too much and the mind just breaks. It can't come inside, not without invitation. But it's patient. It knows how to make people want to come out, how to make the trestle call to them like a siren song. The lights went out. All at once, like someone had thrown a switch. The darkness was absolute, pressing against me like a living thing. Then I heard it. Not the horn this time. Something worse. Singing. A child's voice, high and sweet, drifting through the walls. "Come to the trestle. Come out and play. The train's not running, so it's okay. Step on the tracks. Count every tie. The shepherd's waiting. Don't be shy." I knew that voice. It was Emily Patterson, Mrs. Patterson's granddaughter. The girl who'd disappeared last summer. "Emily," I called out, knowing it was stupid, knowing it was what it wanted. The singing stopped. Then, right outside my window, "Miss Walsh, is that you? I'm lost. I'm so scared. Please help me." Every instinct screamed at me to help her. A child was in danger. A little girl was... No. I gripped the journal tighter. Emily Patterson had been found 3 states away, living with her father. Whatever was outside, it wasn't her. Please! The voice was crying now. It's dark, and I can hear the train coming. Please, don't let it get me. The sound of a train horn in the distance, but different this time, like it was coming from all directions at once. I squeezed my eyes shut, put my hands over my ears, but I could still hear it. The crying, the pleading, and underneath it all, that rhythmic clacking getting closer. Closer. The crying stopped. Silence. Then, from directly above me on the roof, the sound of metal scraping against shingles. Slow. Deliberate. Like something was writing. I had to look. God help me, I had to know. I crept to the window, peered through a crack in the barricade. The moon was full, casting everything in silver light, and on the tracks, illuminated like a stage, it stood there. The shepherd. Neither human nor animal, but something between. Something wrong. Its body seemed to shift and flicker, never quite settling on one form. One moment it looked like a man in an old conductor's uniform. The next, something with too many joints, moving in ways that hurt to watch. It turned toward the house, toward me, and smiled. Have you ever seen something smile that shouldn't have a mouth, that shouldn't have a face at all? It's the kind of thing that rewrites your understanding of the world. It raised one impossible hand and beckoned, and God help me, I wanted to go. Every cell in my body suddenly ached to walk out that door, to cross the field, to climb those tracks. The urge was overwhelming, like the need to breathe underwater when you're drowning. I bit my tongue hard enough to draw blood, using the pain to anchor myself. Stumbled backward, crashed into the coffee table. The journal fell open to a page I hadn't read. The shepherd feeds on choice. On that moment when you decide to break the rules, that's its power. It can't force you. It can only make you want to come. But if someone were to go willingly, to offer themselves as guardian instead of prey, the rest was torn away. A new voice outside now, deep, familiar. Jordan? Sweetheart, it's Grandpa. I've been waiting for you. My heart shattered. It sounded exactly like him. Every inflection, every trace of his Kentucky drawl. I'm at the trestle, honey, just like when you were little, remember? When we'd watch the trains? Come on out, let's watch them together one more time. Tears streamed down my face, because I did remember. Those summer evenings when I'd visit, how he'd take me to watch the freight trains thunder past, how he'd hold my hand and we'd count the cars. Jordan. His voice was fading, moving toward the trestle. Please. I'm so lonely here. My hand was on the doorknob before I realized I'd moved. The metal was ice cold, burning my palm. That's when I heard it. Underneath Grandpa's voice, that wet breathing, that grinding metal sound. It wasn't him. It had never been him. But my hand wouldn't let go of the doorknob. My fingers were locked in place, and the door was starting to open. The door swung wide, and the Kentucky night rushed in like a living thing. The shepherd stood at the edge of the yard, still wearing my grandfather's voice like an ill-fitting coat. But up close, the illusion cracked. Its eyes were wrong. Ancient things that had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. Its smile was too wide, showing too many teeth that gleamed like railroad spikes. There's my girl, it said. And hearing those words in Grandpa's voice while looking at that thing nearly broke me. Come on now. Time to go. My feet moved without my permission. 1 step. 2. The grass was wet with dew that felt like tears. That's it, the shepherd crooned. Just like all the others. The teenagers who thought they were brave. The engineers who stayed on duty. Your grandfather who came looking for answers. They all chose to come in the end. He didn't choose. I spat, fighting for each word. You tricked him. It laughed, a sound like train wheels screeching to a halt. Tricks? I showed him his brother, the one who died in Vietnam, just like I'm showing you him. The heart believes what it needs to believe. Another step. Another. I could see the trestle clearly now, its iron bones stark against the stars, and on the tracks, shadows moved. Dozens of them. All the people who'd been called over the years, still walking, still searching for whatever the shepherd had promised to show them. You can join them, it whispered. Walk my tracks forever. Or, its grin widened impossibly. Your grandmother was clever. She figured out the old bargain. One guardian for each generation. Someone to keep the rules, maintain the boundaries. Feed me stories instead of souls. She fed you stories. Every night for 10 years. Sat by her window and told me tales. Kept me entertained. Distracted. Fed. It tilted its head, considering. But stories get stale. I prefer fear, fresh terror, the kind that comes from breaking the rules. I was at the fence now. The boundary between the house and the path to the trestle. One more step and I'd cross over. What do you want? My voice was barely a whisper. The same thing I've always wanted. Someone to walk my tracks, to count the ties, to become part of the crossing. It leaned closer, and I could smell it, rust and coal smoke and something older than earth. But I'll make you the same deal I made her. Stay, tell me stories. Feed me your fear in small doses, and I'll leave the others alone. For how long? Until you break. They always break eventually. Your grandmother lasted longer than most, but even she was starting to crack. That's why she wrote those rules, trying to keep herself from giving in. And if I refuse, it gestured to the shadows on the tracks. Then you walk, and tomorrow night I'll call someone else, maybe that nice family that just moved into the Morrison place. They have children. Children always come so easily when called. The threat hung between us like fog. I thought of Emily Patterson's voice, of all the missing teenagers over the years, of my grandfather's empty eyes. If I stay, I said slowly, if I become the guardian, you'll leave everyone else alone until you break. Its certainty was absolute, and you will break, they all do, the isolation, the nightly visits, the constant hunger pressing against your windows. Your grandmother lasted 10 years. I doubt you'll make 5. I looked back at the house. My grandmother's house. My house now. Prison or sanctuary, depending on how you looked at it. Then I looked at the trestle. At the shadows wandering endlessly. At the thing wearing faces that weren't its own. I need to get something from the house, I said. It laughed again. Running already? The door only locks from the inside, little guardian. Once you accept, there's no backing out. But I wasn't running. I walked back steadily, feeling its eyes on me like cold hands. In the house, I grabbed my grandmother's journal and the photo albums she'd so carefully preserved. If I was going to do this, I'd do it right. I returned to the fence. The shepherd waited, patient as rust. I accept, I said. The change was immediate. The pull vanished. The desperate need to walk the tracks simply stopped, like a radio suddenly tuned to a different station. The shepherd's grin became something almost genuine. Welcome, guardian. Remember the rules. Every night at 3, I'll come calling. You can look, but don't come outside. You can listen, but don't answer. And when the hunger gets too much, it glanced meaningfully at the journal. Feed me stories. True ones are best. The fear in them is seasoned. And everyone else stays safe? Until you break. It was already fading, becoming translucent. And you will break. The last guardian who didn't was in 1887. She found a loophole. Trained her daughter young. Passed the burden before the breaking point. Your grandmother tried, but you stayed away too long. What happened to the one who found the loophole? Its grin was the last thing to fade. Why do you think I hate clever women? Sleep well, guardian. Tomorrow night we begin. And then I was alone. The night suddenly seemed normal again. Just a woman standing in her yard looking at an old railroad trestle, but I could feel it now. The weight of the bargain, like chains made of responsibility. I went inside, locked the door, started reading my grandmother's journal with new eyes. January 15th, 2015. The first rule of being guardian: never let it see your true fear. It feeds on terror, grows stronger with each feeding. Show it only what you choose. Control the narrative. Make it need your stories more than your screams. 3 o'clock was coming. I had 2 hours to prepare, 2 hours to understand 10 years of my grandmother's strategies. But as I read, a terrible thought occurred to me. My grandmother had known I would come, had counted on it. Every letter asking me to visit, every guilt trip about family obligations. She'd been trying to train me, to prepare me, and I'd stayed away. Lived my life in Chicago, too busy to visit, too modern to believe in family superstitions. Now I understood why she'd looked so relieved at the end. Not because she was dying, because she knew I'd come for the funeral, knew I'd stay in the house, knew I'd find the journal. The clock struck 3. The horn sounded, long and mournful, and outside my window the shepherd began to sing, "Welcome home, guardian, welcome home. Now you'll never be alone. Every night I'll come to play until your mind just floats away." I opened the journal to a blank page, picked up a pen, and began to write. Day 1. I understand now why grandmother collected so many stories, why she kept so many photo albums. Each one is ammunition. Each memory a bullet against the dark. Tonight, I'll tell it about my first Christmas here when I was 7 and got lost in the cornfield. The fear was real then. Hopefully, it's enough. The scratching at the windows had already begun. I've been the guardian for 3 weeks now. That's why I'm sharing this story. Not just to feed the shepherd, though it does enjoy tales of its own legend spreading, but because I need you to understand. If you ever inherit a house near an old railroad track, if you ever hear a train horn when no train should be running, if something scratches at your door with metal fingers, remember the rules. Remember that some hungers are older than steel and stone. Remember that every crossing needs a guardian. And if you're ever driving through Kentucky and see the Pope Lick trestle, keep driving, don't stop, don't take pictures. And whatever you do, don't listen when it calls. Because it will call. It always does. And sometimes even the guardians break. The scratching is getting louder tonight, different. Like it's learned something new. And when I looked out the window earlier, I swear I saw my own face looking back. But that's tomorrow's story. Tonight, I have to feed it tales of other fears. Tonight, I have to be strong. Tonight, I have to remember why I chose this. If you're still listening, if you made it this far, do me a favor, share this story. Not because I need views or subscribers, but because every person who knows the truth is one less person who might walk those tracks. One less shadow for the shepherd to collect. And if you have your own story, your own encounter with something that shouldn't exist, please share it in the comments. We guardians need to know we're not alone. Even if we can never leave, even if we can never meet, we're not alone. The horn is sounding again, closer than usual. Time for tonight's story. Wish me luck. And remember, when you hear something impossible in the night, when every instinct tells you to investigate, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stay in bed, pull the covers higher, and wait for dawn. Sweet dreams. Story number 2. I'm recording this at 3:43 a.m. from my apartment in Portland. The same apartment where it all started 6 weeks ago. Before you think I'm crazy, just listen. Because right now, as I'm talking to you, I can hear my own voice coming from the kitchen, and I'm sitting alone in my bedroom. If you're still here after hearing that, good. You need to know what's happening. Maybe you can help me figure this out. Maybe you've experienced something similar, or maybe you'll start hearing it too. The story begins now. It started with a whisper. Not the dramatic kind you hear in movies. This was softer. Like when you're half asleep and your brain replays conversations from earlier that day. Except I lived alone in my one-bedroom apartment on Hawthorne Boulevard, and the voice I heard was mine. The first time it happened, I'd just gotten home from my shift at the bookstore. October rain hammered against the windows. That particular Pacific Northwest rain that sounds like static on old TVs. I was making instant ramen, the cheap kind college students live on, when I heard it. Should have bought the good brand. I froze, chopsticks halfway to my mouth. The voice came from somewhere near the living room. My voice, but fuller somehow. Like hearing yourself on a recording, except clearer. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, noodles going cold, listening. Nothing. Just the rain and the hum of my ancient refrigerator. I laughed it off. 12-hour shifts do weird things to your brain, right? Plus, the walls in these old Portland buildings are paper thin. Maybe my neighbor was watching something and my tired mind just filled in the blanks. But then it happened again the next night. I was brushing my teeth, staring at my reflection in the spotted bathroom mirror. The fluorescent light flickered. It always did that, casting weird shadows across my face. That's when I heard it from the hallway. Missed a spot. I spat out toothpaste so fast I nearly choked. Yanked open the bathroom door. The hallway stretched empty and dark, just the faint glow from my laptop in the living room. My heart drummed against my ribs, but I forced myself to check every room. Nothing. Nobody. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the old building made me jump. Every car passing outside sounded like footsteps. Around 4 a.m., exhaustion finally won, and I drifted off, only to wake up to my alarm and convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Stress, I told myself. That had to be it. Between work and trying to finish my novel and Mom calling every day about Thanksgiving plans, my brain was just playing tricks. But deep down, I knew better. See, there was something I hadn't told anyone. Not my coworker Melissa, not my best friend Jake back in Ohio. 2 weeks before the whispers started, I'd found something in the apartment. I'd been cleaning out the bedroom closet. The previous tenant left in a hurry, according to the landlord, when I discovered a small wooden box shoved behind a loose floorboard. Inside was a cassette tape, no label. Just a plain black cassette that looked like it came straight from the 90s. Being curious and honestly pretty stupid, I'd played it. The recording was mostly static. 20 minutes of nothing but white noise. I was about to turn it off when a voice broke through. Faint, distorted, but unmistakably saying, "Can you hear me yet?" The tape ended there. I tossed it back in the box, shoved it in my desk drawer, and tried to forget about it. But now, with these whispers, the third night changed everything. I came home to find my laptop open on the coffee table. The screen showed a Word document I didn't remember creating. One sentence typed in the middle of the page, "We need to talk." My hands shook as I approached the laptop. The document was created at 2:13 p.m. I'd been at work, dealing with a customer who insisted we had a first edition of some book we definitely didn't carry. There was no way I could have. Finally, paying attention? This time, the voice came from right behind me. I spun around so fast I knocked over my coffee mug. It shattered on the hardwood floor, brown liquid spreading like blood. But the room was empty. Just me and the broken ceramic and that cursor blinking on the screen. "Who's there?" My voice cracked. Sounded nothing like the confident tone coming from wherever it was coming from. Silence. I cleaned up the coffee with shaking hands. deleted the document, and did what any rational person would do. I called Jake. "Dude, it's almost midnight here," he answered on the 5th ring. "Sorry, I paused. How do you explain this without sounding insane? "I think someone's been breaking into my apartment." "What? Are you okay? Did you call the cops?" "No, It's complicated. They're not stealing anything, just messing with me." Jake sighed. I could picture him rubbing his eyes, probably still in his EMT uniform. "Remember freshman year when you thought someone was stealing your psych notes? Turned out you were sleep deprived and kept leaving them in the library? This is different." "Is it though? When's the last time you got 8 hours of sleep?" I couldn't answer that, because he was right, partially. I hadn't been sleeping well, but that didn't explain the voice. My voice. After I hung up, I made a decision. I'd record everything. If I was going crazy, at least I'd have proof. If someone was messing with me, I'd catch them. I set up my phone to record audio while I slept, placed it on the nightstand facing the door. Then I took 2 melatonin and prayed for dreamless sleep. I woke up at 3:33 a.m. Not naturally. Something woke me. A sound like breathing, but not from outside the room. From the recording, I grabbed my phone with trembling fingers and played back the last few minutes. Static. Then, clear as day, "Stop fighting this, we're the same person." My voice. But I'd been asleep. The timestamp showed 3:13 a.m. 16 minutes ago. I scrubbed back further, more static. Then, at 2:45 a.m. "You found the tape. Good, that means it's working." I dropped the phone. It clattered on the floor, screen cracking, but I could still hear the recording playing. My voice, having a one-sided conversation. "I know you're scared. I was too the first time, but you need to understand, this isn't possession. It's not ghosts. It's something much stranger and much more personal." I scrambled for the phone, fumbling to stop the recording, but it kept playing. "Tomorrow night, same time. Don't run. Don't call anyone, just listen. Really listen. Because what I have to tell you, it's going to change everything you think you know about yourself." The recording cut to static. I sat there in the dark, heart hammering, trying to make sense of what I'd heard, my voice, having a conversation, while I slept. But that was impossible, wasn't it? The rest of the night blurred together. I turned on every light in the apartment, made coffee strong enough to strip paint, sat on my couch with a kitchen knife in my lap like that would somehow help against whatever this was. When sunrise finally painted the Portland sky pink and gold, I called in sick to work. Melissa didn't question it, said I sounded terrible. If only she knew. I spent the day researching. Carbon monoxide poisoning, bought a detector. Mental health symptoms, made an appointment with a therapist for next week. Previous tenants found nothing useful online. The property management company just said the last person relocated for work. By evening, exhaustion weighed on me like a lead blanket. But I couldn't sleep, wouldn't sleep, not until I understood what was happening. At 2:45 a.m., I sat in my living room, every light on, phone recording, waiting. The voice came right on schedule. "Good, you're learning." This time it came from everywhere and nowhere. Not from a specific room, but from inside, like wearing headphones, except I wasn't. "This is impossible," I whispered. "Is it?" my voice replied. Not mocking, almost sad. "You found the tape, you played it, you opened the door." "What door? What are you talking about?" Silence stretched for so long I thought it was over. Then, "The door between what you are and what you could be, what you will be." "I'm not some ghost, Sam. I'm you. A you that made different choices, took different paths, and now we're bleeding through." My hands clenched into fists. That's not how reality works." "Says who? You think you understand reality. You work in a bookstore. You eat ramen for dinner. You've been writing the same novel for 3 years. You think small, Sam. You always have." The words stung because they weren't wrong, but hearing them in my own voice made it worse somehow. "If you're really me," I said slowly, "prove it." A laugh. My laugh, but colder. "Remember Jessica Chen? Junior year, you were going to ask her to the spring formal, but you chickened out. Told everyone you had to work, but really you spent the night playing video games and feeling sorry for yourself." My blood turned to ice. I'd never told anyone that, not even Jake. "Or how about the time you stole $20 from Mom's purse in high school? For that concert you said you couldn't afford?" She knew, by the way. She just never said anything. "Stop." My voice came out strangled. "I'm not here to hurt you, Sam. I'm here because I need your help. And whether you admit it or not, you need mine." The conversation that followed broke everything I thought I knew about reality. "Let me explain." The voice, my voice, continued. "You know how sometimes you have dreams so vivid they feel real? Where you make different choices, live different lives?" I nodded, then felt stupid for responding to empty air. "Those aren't just dreams, Sam. They're glimpses. Windows into the paths you didn't take, the lives you're living elsewhere." "That's not possible. You played the tape. That tape wasn't meant for you. It was meant for me. But sometimes things get mixed up, crossed wires between realities. And when you played it..." A pause. When the voice returned, it sounded tired. "You created a bridge between my world and yours, and now we're stuck like this, two versions of the same person sharing the same space, fighting for the same existence." I stood up, pacing. The knife fell from my lap, clattering on the floor. "This is insane. You're saying you're me from... what, another dimension?" "Not exactly. More like a different probability. In my world, I didn't take the bookstore job. I finished the novel, published it, made choices that led me somewhere else, somewhere darker." "What kind of choices?" Silence, then quieter. "The kind that seemed right at the time. The kind that promised success, recognition, everything we ever wanted, but, Sam, some prices aren't worth paying." The lights flickered. Just for a second, but long enough to make my heart skip. "Is that why you're here? Running from something?" "Not running, trying to prevent. In my world, I found the tape 5 years ago. Played it out of curiosity, just like you. But I didn't stop there. I dug deeper. Found others. Learned things about reality that break people." My mouth felt dry. "What kind of things?" "The kind that make you question if anything is real. If anyone around you is who they claim to be. If the choices you make are yours. Or if something else is pulling the strings." I sank back onto the couch. This was too much, too crazy, but the alternative, that I was having a complete mental breakdown, wasn't much better. "So what happens now?" I asked. Now we have a problem. The bridge between us, it's not stable, it's growing. Soon others will notice. Others who found their own tapes, made their own bridges. And trust me, not all versions of us are friendly." As if on cue, my laptop chimed. A new document had opened. Words appeared as I watched, typing themselves. "He's lying. Don't trust him. S. See?" My voice said, but now it sounded strained. "It's already starting." Who was that? Another us. One who made different choices than either of us. One who thinks the solution is to collapse all versions into one. To become something more. The document kept typing, "You're weak. Both of you, but together. Imagine what we could accomplish. All our knowledge, all our experiences, all our potential unified. S. Don't listen," my voice urged. "That path leads nowhere good. I've seen what happens when someone tries to merge realities. It doesn't create a god, it creates a monster." My head spun. 3 versions of me? How many more were there? The laptop screen flickered and a video file opened. Security footage, grainy and black and white. It showed my apartment, but not quite. The furniture was different, more expensive. And there I was, or someone who looked exactly like me, sitting at a desk covered in papers and red string like some conspiracy theorist's dream. The me in the video looked up at the camera and smiled, but it wasn't my smile. Too wide, too knowing. Soon, video me mouthed, the file corrupted and closed. We need to destroy the tape, my voice said urgently. It's the only way to close the bridges, to stop this before... A new voice interrupted. My voice, but different again. Smoother, more confident. It came from the kitchen. Destroy our only advantage. That's exactly what someone who wanted to keep us weak would say. I stood, legs shaking. 4 versions now? How many of us are there? As many as there are choices, the first voice replied. But only a few found the tapes. Only a few know the truth. The question is, which version of you do you want to be? The kitchen voice laughed. As if he has a choice. We're all headed to the same place eventually. The only difference is how we get there. That's not true, the first voice insisted. Sam, you still have free will. You can still... Free will? A third new voice, this one from my bedroom. Tired, bitter. There's no such thing. I learned that the hard way. We're all just following scripts written by... Enough! I shouted. Silence fell. Even the rain outside seemed to pause. I want to talk to all of you, face to face. Or whatever this is. That's dangerous, the first voice warned. Everything about this is dangerous, I shot back, but I'm tired of being afraid of my own voice. For a moment, nothing. Then the air in my living room shifted, like heat shimmer on hot asphalt, and suddenly I wasn't alone. 3 figures materialized. All me, but different. The first looked almost exactly like me, but worn down. Circles under his eyes. Clothes wrinkled. He nodded when he saw me. Sam. The second wore an expensive suit I could never afford. His hair was styled differently. He smirked. This is cozy. The third made me step back. Same face, same body, but something in his eyes was broken. Empty. He didn't speak, just stared. Well, Suit Me said, adjusting his cufflinks. The gang's all here. Shall we discuss our little paradox? But before anyone could respond, the lights went out. In the darkness, a new voice whispered, not mine this time. Something older, hungrier. 4 little versions all in a row, but only one can stay, the others must go. The sound of breaking glass, a scream, was it mine? The lights flickered back on. Broken me was gone. Where he'd stood, only a small pile of ash remained. What the hell was that? I gasped. Tired me had gone pale. That's what happens when too many bridges open in one place. Reality starts to notice. Starts to clean house. Suit Me studied the ash with clinical interest. Fascinating. Natural selection on a multiversal scale. Fascinating, I rounded on him. One of us just died. Ceased to exist, he corrected. Important distinction. And frankly, he was the weakest link. Too damaged to contribute. I wanted to punch him. Punch myself? This was getting confusing. We need to work together, Tired Me said. That thing, it'll come back. It always does. And we can't fight it alone. Or, Suit Me suggested, we could use this opportunity to thin the competition. Last man standing gets to be the real Sam. That's not how it works, Tired Me snapped. We're all real. That's the problem. As they argued, I noticed something. The ash on the floor was moving, forming patterns, letters. Guys, I said. They kept arguing. Guys. They turned, saw what I saw. The ash had spelled out a message, 1 body, 4 souls, choose or I choose for you. The message lingered for maybe 10 seconds before a breeze from nowhere scattered the ash. We stood in tense silence, each processing what we'd just seen. All right, I said finally. Cards on the table. What is that thing? Tired Me sank onto my couch, head in his hands. I call it the auditor. It shows up when reality gets too crowded. Think of it as an immune system response. How poetic, Suit Me said, examining my bookshelf with disdain. I prefer to think of it as natural selection, reality favoring the strong. You would, Tired Me muttered. I stepped between them. Focus. How do we stop it? We don't, Tired Me said. We can only delay it, distract it. I've been running for, God, years? Time gets weird when you're jumping between realities. Running sounds inefficient, Suit Me said. I vote we face it head on, use what we know to bargain. Bargain with what? I asked. His smile was cold. Information. You think we're the only ones dealing with this? There are millions of versions of everyone, all bleeding through. The auditor can't catch them all. We could point it toward bigger fish. Sell out other versions of ourselves? I felt sick. Other versions of everyone, he corrected. It's survival of the fittest, Sam. Always has been. Tired Me stood abruptly. That's exactly the thinking that got us into this mess. The tape, the bridges. Someone made those. Someone who thought they could game the system. You know who? I asked. He nodded slowly. Another us. The first one to find a tape. He called himself Prime. Thought if he could map all realities, control all versions, he'd become God. Sounds ambitious, Suit Me mused. Sounds insane, I countered. Maybe, but he learned something we didn't. The tapes aren't random, they're bait. The auditor, it doesn't just clean up paradoxes, it feeds on them. On us. The temperature in the room dropped. Our breath came out in small clouds. It's coming back, Tired Me whispered. The lights didn't go out this time. Instead, shadows began moving independently of their sources. My shadow stretched toward Suit Me's. His reached for Tired Me's. All three twisted together in the center of the room, forming something that hurt to look at. Choose, the auditor's voice scraped against reality. Or I choose for you. Wait, I said desperately. What if we don't choose? What if we find another way? The shadow thing paused. Speak. I looked at my other selves. Tired Me seemed resigned. Suit Me calculating. But they were both me. Different choices, different paths, but fundamentally, me. You feed on paradoxes, right? Multiple versions existing in one space? The shadow writhed. Yes. So, what if we gave you a bigger meal, not just us, but the source? Prime, the one who started all this. Silence, then, interesting. Suit Me caught on first. A trade. We help you find the original paradox and you leave us alone. All of us, I added quickly. Every version here walks away. The shadow contracted, expanded, contracted again. When it spoke, it sounded almost amused. You would betray your own progenitor. He betrayed us first, Tired Me said quietly. Every tape, every bridge, were just experiments to him. Lab rats in his multiversal maze. And you know where to find him? The auditor asked. I looked at Tired Me. He nodded slowly. I've been tracking him for years, following the bridges backward. He's close. Closer than you'd think. How close? I asked. He pointed at my desk, at the drawer where I'd stashed the wooden box. Every tape leads back to the source, and the source is here. Has been all along. My hands trembled as I opened the drawer. The box looked different now. Older. The wood was carved with symbols that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them. Open it, the auditor commanded. I did. The cassette was gone. In its place was a key, old-fashioned, brass, with teeth that formed impossible patterns. The key to Prime's reality, Tired Me explained. He hides there, in the spaces between worlds, watching, waiting, collecting data from every version that finds a tape. So we go there, Suitme said. Confront him. End this. It's not that simple, Tired Me warned. His reality, his rules. We'd be walking into a trap, as opposed to standing here waiting to be eaten. Suitme gestured at the writhing shadows. He had a point. Together, I said. We go together, all three of us, united for once. Or, the auditor corrected, I go too, to ensure compliance. Great. A reality-eating shadow monster as backup. What could go wrong? I picked up the key. It was heavier than it looked and warm to the touch. How do we use it? Any door, Tired Me said. But once we go through, there's no guarantee we can come back. Then we'd better make it count. I walked to my front door, key in hand. Ready? Suitme straightened his tie. Always. Tired Me just nodded. The auditor's shadows coiled around us like smoke. I inserted the key, turned it. The door opened onto impossible geometry, stairs that went up and down simultaneously, hallways that folded in on themselves. And in the distance, a figure sitting at a desk made of fractured mirrors. He looked up as we entered. My face, but older, eyes that held the weight of infinite possibilities. Finally, Prime said. I was wondering when you'd arrive. Behind us, the door slammed shut. Prime's reality defied description. The room we entered kept changing. One moment a vast library with books floating like birds. The next a sterile laboratory with monitors showing millions of different versions of me living different lives. Welcome, Prime said, standing. He wore simple clothes, but power radiated from him like heat. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Chairs materialized. We sat, even the auditor somehow condensing into a vaguely humanoid shadow. You know why we're here, I said. Of course, you think I'm the villain, the puppet master pulling strings across realities. He smiled sadly. The truth is more complicated. Enlighten us, Suitme said dryly. Prime waved his hand. The room solidified into something like a cosmic observatory, stars and realities swirling overhead. 20 years ago, I was like you, working dead-end jobs, dreaming of more. Then I found the first tape. Not by accident, it found me. A message from another reality, a warning. About what? Tired Me asked. About what happens when a consciousness becomes aware of its infinite variations. Most people live and die in one reality, blissfully ignorant. But some of us, we're different. We sense the other paths, feel them pressing against our reality like hands against glass. He gestured, and images appeared in the air. Versions of us, living different lives. Happy, sad, successful, broken. The tapes were my attempt to control it, to give people a choice about which reality they wanted, but I didn't anticipate. He looked at the auditor. I didn't know reality had antibodies. You knew, the auditor rasped. You knew and continued anyway, because the alternative was worse. Prime's composure cracked. Do you know what happens when the barriers break down naturally? When someone becomes aware of all their versions without preparation? He showed us. The image was horrific. A person, was it me? Screaming as multiple versions tried to exist in the same space. Reality tearing around them like wet paper. The tapes were meant to ease the transition, to help people choose consciously. But the auditor, he shook his head. It sees any deviation as a threat. Because it is, the auditor said. Order must be maintained. At what cost? Prime challenged. How many versions have you consumed? How many possibilities erased? As many as necessary. They stared at each other. Predator and prey who'd been dancing this dance for decades. So, what's your end game? I asked. Keep making tapes? Keep opening bridges? No. Prime looked tired suddenly. I'm done running. Done watching versions of myself suffer and die. That's why you're here. He pulled out a final cassette. This one glowed with soft light. The master tape. Every bridge, every connection flows through this. Destroy it, and all the bridges close. Every version returns to their reality, clean slate. But, Suit Me prompted, but destroying it will also erase the knowledge, the awareness. You'll forget about each other, about the infinite possibilities. You'll be ordinary again. That doesn't sound so bad, Tired Me said quietly. Doesn't it? Prime challenged. Look at you. Broken by knowledge, yes, but also expanded by it. You've seen beyond the veil. Are you really willing to go back to ignorance? I thought about it. About the fear of the last few days, but also the wonder. Knowing that every choice spawned new realities, new versions of myself living different lives. What's the alternative? I asked. Prime smiled. Integration. Not the violent merger the auditor fears, but conscious cooperation. Versions working together, sharing knowledge and experience. Imagine what we could accomplish. Imagine the chaos, the auditor countered. Reality would unravel, or evolve, Prime said. Isn't that what consciousness does? Expand, grow. Why should we be limited to one narrow slice of existence? The room fell silent. The weight of the choice pressed down on us. Finally, I stood. Can I see it? The master tape? Prime handed it over without hesitation. It felt warm, alive almost, the sum of all possibilities in my palm. You know what I think? I said. I think you're both right, and both wrong. I looked at my other selves, Tired Me, worn down by knowledge. Suit Me, ambitious but hollow. Even Prime, powerful but isolated. Maybe the answer isn't choosing between ignorance and omniscience. Maybe it's accepting that we're meant to be singular, one person, one path, one set of choices. That's what makes them matter. Philosophical but impractical, Suit Me said. The bridges exist, the knowledge is out there, then we contain it, I said. We destroy the master tape, close the bridges, but we remember, we few who've seen beyond. We keep the secret, keep watch, make sure this doesn't happen again. A cabal of guardians? Prime mused. Interesting. But who watches the watchers? I held up the tape. No one. That's the point. We trust ourselves, all versions, to do what's right. Not because someone's forcing us, but because we choose to. The auditor's form shifted. And if you fail, if the knowledge spreads, then you do your job, I said. But until then, give us a chance to prove reality doesn't need antibodies. Just wisdom. Long silence. Then Prime laughed. You know what? You're right. I've been so focused on controlling the infinite, I forgot about choosing the singular. He nodded to the tape. Do it. End my experiment. Let's see what happens when we choose to be human instead of gods. I looked at the others. Tired Me nodded. Even Suit Me, after a moment, agreed. Together, I said. We all placed our hands on the tape. Even the auditor extended a tendril of shadow. On 3, I suggested. Just do it, Tired Me said. I closed my eyes, felt the warmth of infinite possibilities in my hands, then squeezed. The tape shattered like glass. Light exploded outward, through us, beyond us. I felt the bridges collapsing, reality separating, versions of myself sliding back to their own worlds. Remember, Prime's voice echoed as he faded. Remember what you've learned. The light consumed everything. I woke up in my apartment. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows. My phone showed 7:23 a.m. Saturday. For a moment, I couldn't remember why I was on the couch. Then it hit me. All of it. The voices, the versions, the choice. I ran to my desk. The drawer was open, empty, no box, no tape, no key. Had it been real? Or just the most vivid dream of my life? Then I saw it, on my laptop screen, a single document titled Remember. Inside 4 words. You are not alone. As I stared at the screen, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered. Sam? A voice said. Familiar but different. This is you from Cincinnati. I just woke up with the strangest memory. Another call came through. Then another. Versions of me, scattered across realities, remembering. We talked for hours, compared notes, shared experiences, not to merge or control, but just to connect. To know we weren't alone in the infinite. The auditor never came. Maybe it was watching. Maybe it was waiting. Or maybe, just maybe, it understood that some paradoxes don't need solving, just accepting. I still work at the bookstore, still eat cheap ramen, still struggle with my novel. But now, when I face a choice, I remember. Somewhere, another me is choosing differently, and that's okay. That's what makes my choice matter. The conversation I keep having with myself, it never really ends. It just gets quieter, more peaceful, more human. But late at night, when Portland rain drums against my windows, I sometimes hear an echo, a whisper, a reminder, and I wonder, what would you do if you heard your own voice calling from the dark? Would you run? Would you listen? Would you remember? The answer might surprise you. After all, we're all having conversations with ourselves. The question is, are you brave enough to listen? Sweet dreams. And if you hear your own voice tonight, just remember, you're not going crazy. You're just becoming aware. The real question is, what will you do with that awareness? If this kept you up tonight, let me know in the comments. Share your own strange experiences, because I have a feeling I'm not the only one who's found a tape, and who knows, maybe your story is the key to understanding mine. Until next time, sleep tight. Story number 3. The notification came through at 2:47 a.m. Motion detected, backyard camera. I almost ignored it. I get those alerts all the time. Raccoons, stray cats. Sometimes just a plastic bag dancing in the wind, but something made me check this one. Maybe it was the way my dog, Cooper, had started whimpering from the foot of my bed. Or maybe it was just that feeling you get sometimes. That cold prickle at the back of your neck that whispers, something's wrong. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, squinting at the bright screen. The live feed loaded slowly, buffering. And then I saw it. Something was climbing the side of my house. Not a raccoon, not a cat. It moved wrong. Too fluid, too deliberate, like it knew exactly where to place each limb. If you're watching this late at night, maybe check your own security cameras. Just to be safe. Because what I'm about to tell you, it changed everything I thought I knew about home security, about safety, about what might be out there in the dark, waiting. The story begins now. I'd installed the security system 3 weeks earlier. 8 cameras total. 2 on each side of my modest 2-story home in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Nothing fancy, just a middle-class neighborhood where the biggest crime was usually teenagers toilet papering houses on Halloween. The kind of place where people still leave their garage doors open and kids play street hockey until the streetlights come on. My neighbor, Bill, had laughed when he saw me up on the ladder, drilling holes for the mounting brackets. "What are you expecting, Mike? The mafia?" He'd called out from his driveway, beer in hand. "Just being careful," I'd replied, not mentioning the real reason. See, I work nights at the hospital. Radiology tech, 3rd shift. My house sits empty from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. And lately, I'd been finding things. Small things. A garden tool moved from where I'd left it. Prints in the flower bed that didn't match my shoes. Once, I could have sworn my back gate was open when I came home, even though I always double-check it before leaving. The camera system was supposed to give me peace of mind, supposed to prove I was just being paranoid. Funny how things work out. The first 2 weeks were exactly what I expected. Dozens of false alarms. The motion detection was too sensitive at first. Every swaying branch, every wandering cat set it off. I adjusted the settings, created detection zones, fine-tuned it until it only alerted for actual movement near the house. By week 3, I'd gotten maybe 2 or 3 notifications a night. Usually nothing. Sometimes a deer wandering through from the woods behind the development. That Tuesday started like any other. I'd gotten home from my shift around 7:30 a.m., grabbed a shower, played with Cooper in the backyard for a bit. He's a golden retriever, 5 years old, the best boy you could ask for. Never barks without reason. Always happy. That morning, though, he kept staring at the tree line at the back of the property, just standing there, tail down, occasionally letting out these low whines. "What is it, buddy?" I'd asked, following his gaze. Nothing there but trees and shadows. The morning sun hadn't quite reached that part of the yard yet. After a few minutes, Cooper shook it off, went back to chasing his tennis ball. I forgot about it. I should have paid attention. Dogs know things. They sense things we can't. I slept until about 4 p.m., normal schedule for me. Made dinner, watched some TV, took Cooper for his evening walk around the neighborhood. Everything normal, everything routine. Mrs. Chen was watering her flowers. The Johnson kids were shooting hoops in their driveway, just another quiet evening in Cedar Falls. At 10:30 p.m., I got ready for work. Scrubs on, badge clipped, lunch packed. I did my usual rounds, doors locked, windows secure, porch light on. Cooper settled into his bed in the living room with a puzzled look, still not used to the night shift schedule even after 2 years. "Be a good boy," I told him, giving him a scratch behind the ears. "I'll see you in the morning." The first notification came at 11:43 p.m. I was in the middle of positioning a patient for a chest x-ray when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Side yard camera. I ignored it. Probably a cat. The next one came at 12:15 a.m. Front porch camera. Again, I let it go. The night was busy. Car accident victims, emergency scans. I didn't have time to check every alert, but at 1:20 a.m., during a brief lull, I opened the app. My notification list showed 7 alerts in the past 2 hours. That was unusual. I pulled up the recorded clips, starting with the most recent. The infrared night vision made everything look ghostly white and black. The first clip showed nothing, just my empty driveway. The second, same thing, but the third, I had to replay it 3 times to be sure I was seeing it right. Something moved across the frame. Low to the ground, maybe 3 feet tall. It wasn't walking, it was sort of scuttling, like a person moving on all 4s, but wrong. The joints bent in ways that made my stomach turn. It was only in frame for maybe 2 seconds before disappearing behind my car. My hands were shaking as I scrolled to the next clip. This one was from the side yard camera. Same thing, that crawling motion, but this time I could see it more clearly. It wasn't an animal, the proportions were all wrong. Too long in the limbs, too narrow in the body, and the way it moved, deliberate, purposeful, like it was looking for something. I called home immediately. Maybe Cooper would bark, scare whatever it was away. The phone rang, and rang, and rang. No answer, of course not, I live alone. But somehow, I'd hoped. I don't know what I'd hoped. The next hour crawled by. I kept checking the app obsessively. No new alerts. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it was just some person playing a prank, or someone on drugs, confused and crawling around the neighborhood. We'd had a few meth problems in town recently. That had to be it. At 2:30 a.m., I finally got a break. Rushed to the break room, pulled up the app again. Still no new alerts. I went back through the old clips, trying to see if I'd missed anything. That's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the background of one clip, the one from the side yard, there was a window. My bedroom window. And in that window, was that movement? I zoomed in as far as the app would let me. The image was grainy, pixelated. But there was definitely something there, a shape, moving behind the glass, inside my house. I called 911 immediately, explained the situation as calmly as I could. They said they'd send a patrol car to check it out. 20 minutes, they estimated, 20 minutes. I paced the break room, checking and rechecking the cameras. Nothing new, no movement. Even Cooper seemed to have disappeared from his usual spot in the living room. Then, at 2:47 a.m., the notification came through. Motion detected. Backyard camera. My hands trembled as I opened the alert. The clip was longer this time, 30 seconds. For the first 5 seconds, nothing. Just my backyard bathed in that eerie infrared glow. The swing set I'd inherited from the previous owners sat still. The fence line was clear. Then it entered the frame. It came from the left side, where the camera's view met the house. At first, I thought it was a person in dark clothing. But as it moved into full view, no. The proportions were wrong. The arms too long, hanging down past where knees should be. The head seemed too small for the body, or maybe it was the angle. It moved on all fours across my patio, fluid and spider-like. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was when it reached the back wall of my house, and started climbing. Not climbing like a person would, finding handholds and footholds. It simply adhered to the siding, pressed against it and went up, defying gravity like a gecko on glass, straight up the wall towards the second floor. Toward my bedroom window, I called 911 again. "It's climbing my house," I practically shouted into the phone. The dispatcher, same woman as before, tried to calm me down. The patrol car was 5 minutes out, she assured me. Just 5 more minutes. I watched, helpless from 30 miles away, as the thing reached my bedroom window. It pressed against the glass, and for just a moment, the infrared caught its face. No, not a face. Not really. The features were there, eyes, nose, mouth, but arranged wrong. Like someone had tried to draw a human face from memory and gotten the spacing all wrong. The eyes too far apart, the mouth too wide, and it was smiling. God help me, it was smiling. The clip ended. I frantically checked the other cameras. Nothing. How was that possible? It had to come down somewhere, had to exit somehow, unless it was still up there. My phone rang. The 911 dispatcher. "Sir, our officer is at your residence. He's reporting no signs of forced entry. No one's answering the door." "Check the windows," I said. "The second-floor windows, please." I heard muffled radio chatter. Then, "Officer is checking now. He's walking the perimeter." "Sir, do you have any pets that might be in distress?" "Yes, a dog. Cooper. Golden retriever." "Why?" The officer reports hearing whimpering from inside the residence. He's requesting permission to enter. "Yes, yes. Break the door down if you have to. My spare key is under the... Wait." I pulled up the front door camera on my phone. There was the officer, standing on my porch, radio in hand. But behind him, in the corner of the frame, "Tell him to turn around," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Tell him to turn around right now." "Sir?" "Tell him to turn around." Too late. The thing dropped from above. Must have been clinging to the porch overhang. It landed on the officer's back, those 2 long arms wrapping around him. He went down hard, radio skittering across the concrete. I watched in horror as they struggled, the officer trying to reach his weapon, the thing's face buried against his neck. And then the camera cut out. Just went black. Connection lost. I tried the other cameras. All black, every single one. The next 15 minutes were the longest of my life. I called 911 repeatedly. Busy signal. How does 911 have a busy signal? I tried my neighbors, Bill, Mrs. Chen, anyone. No answer. It was 3 a.m., of course, no one was answering. Finally, I just left. Told my supervisor I had a family emergency, got in my car, and drove. 90 in a 65 zone. I didn't care. I had to get home, had to help that officer, had to find Cooper. The normal 30-minute drive took me 18 minutes. I screeched into my neighborhood, tires squealing. But as I turned onto my street, police cars. ambulances, fire trucks. The whole street was lit up like Christmas. I parked haphazardly and ran toward my house, but an officer stopped me. "Sir, you can't. It's my house. I'm the one who called." He looked at me differently then, sympathetically. "You're Mike Thompson?" "Yes." "The officer, is he?" "He's alive. Shaken up. Some scratches, but alive. Whatever attacked him ran off when backup arrived." "And my dog?" "Found him locked in the upstairs bathroom. Scared, but unharmed." "Sir, we need to ask you some questions, but first, when was the last time you were in your attic?" The question caught me off guard. "The attic? Maybe 6 months ago when I put away the Christmas decorations." "Why?" He hesitated. "You might want to come see this." They led me through my own home like it was a crime scene, which I supposed it was. Cooper came bounding over the moment he saw me, nearly knocking me over. I'd never been so happy to see him, but even as I hugged him, I could feel him trembling. "He was locked in the bathroom?" I asked. "From the outside," the officer confirmed. Deadbolt turned, like someone wanted to keep him safe or out of the way. We climbed the stairs to the second floor. My bedroom door was open. A crime scene photographer snapping pictures inside, but they led me past it, to the hallway ceiling where the attic access panel was located. The panel was open. The pull-down ladder extended. "We found it like this," the officer said. "Did you leave it open?" "No, never. I always push it back up." I stared at the dark square in my ceiling. "What's up there?" "That's what we need you to tell us." They'd already been up, of course, swept it for danger, but they wanted me to see it, to explain it. I climbed the ladder on unsteady legs. An officer followed, flashlight cutting through the dusty darkness. The attic was exactly as I'd left it. Boxes of decorations, old furniture, insulation. Except, in the far corner, behind the chimney, someone had been living. No, not living. Nesting. There was a makeshift bed, if you could call it that. Looked like insulation pulled from the walls, mixed with what appeared to be animal fur and strips of fabric. The smell hit me then, musky, animal-like, but with something else underneath, something sour and wrong. "How long?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "Based on the accumulation. Several weeks at least, maybe months." Months. Something had been living above me for months. Above my bed, watching, listening. I thought of all those nights I'd felt uneasy, all those times Cooper had barked at the ceiling. "There's more," the officer said, directing his flashlight to the walls. Photographs. Dozens of them, tacked to the exposed beams. All of me. Me sleeping. Me watching TV. Me in the shower. God, how? The angles were impossible. Some seemed to be taken from inside the walls. Inside the goddamn walls. But there were older photos too, much older. Me as a teenager, me as a child. My family home from 20 years ago, 3 states away. How was that possible? "Mr. Thompson," the officer said carefully, "do you have any idea who might have done this? Anyone from your past? Anyone who might be fixated on you?" I shook my head, numb. But then I saw it, in the corner, partially hidden under the insulation nest. A small wooden box, the kind you'd keep jewelry in. I recognized it immediately, my mother's. She died 5 years ago. That box should have been in her house when we sold it. Inside were more photos, but these weren't of me. They were of my mother, and her mother, and her mother. 4 generations of my family, all women except for me. All taken from strange angles, all taken without their knowledge. At the bottom of the box was a journal. The handwriting was unsettling, too precise, like someone trying very hard to write like a human would. The entries went back decades. Found another one. The bloodline continues. Must watch, must wait. She has a son, unexpected, but perhaps useful. He lives alone now. Perfect, the watching can be closer. He installed cameras, clever boy. But I've been here so much longer than he knows. The entries got stranger as they went on. References to the change, to becoming, to waiting for the right time. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. He knows something is wrong, the dog knows. Time to accelerate. Time to introduce myself properly. I dropped the journal, my hands shaking. What is this? What does it mean? But before the officer could answer, we heard it. From somewhere inside the walls. A scratching sound like fingernails on wood, moving, circling. Cooper started barking from downstairs. Not his normal bark. The bark he reserves for real danger. Everyone out, the lead officer commanded. Now! We scrambled down the ladder, but as I reached the hallway, the lights went out. Complete darkness. Cooper's barking turned to whimpering. Then silence. In that silence, I heard breathing that wasn't mine. Wet. Raspy. Close. "Hello, Michael," a voice said from the darkness. Not quite human, like someone had learned to speak by listening through walls. "I've waited so long to meet you properly." The officer's flashlights pierced the darkness, beams sweeping frantically. But the hallway was empty. Just us, breathing hard, weapons drawn. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. They'd heard it. Everyone had heard it. "Mr. Thompson, we're getting you out of here," the lead officer said. But as we moved towards the stairs, the voice came again. From the walls themselves. "Leaving so soon, but we have so much to discuss. About your mother, your grandmother, about what you are." Pictures began falling from the walls. Family photos I'd hung years ago. They didn't just fall, they flew, glass shattering against the opposite wall. In the chaos, I saw it. A section of wall that wasn't quite right, slightly misaligned, like a hidden panel. "There," I pointed. An officer approached, weapon raised. He pushed on the panel and it swung inward, revealing a narrow passage between the walls. The smell that wafted out was overwhelming. That same musky, wrong scent from the attic, but concentrated. The lead officer called for backup to clear the passage, but I already knew they wouldn't find anything. Whatever this thing was, it knew these hidden spaces better than anyone. It had been here longer than the house itself, maybe. We evacuated to the front yard. More units arrived. They searched for hours, finding more passages, more nests, more evidence of something living inside the very structure of my home. But no creature, no intruder, no explanation for what we'd all seen and heard. As dawn broke, I sat on my front steps with Cooper, watching crime scene techs work. My house wasn't mine anymore. Maybe it never had been. Bill came over with coffee and a blanket, bless him. Didn't ask questions, just sat with me. "Mr. Thompson," a detective approached, notebook in hand. "We've been looking into the history of your property. This house was built in 1952, but there was another structure here before. A farmhouse that burned down in 1920. I nodded, not sure where this was going. The family that lived there, the Crawfords, they reported strange incidents, things living in the walls, disappearances. The fire was never officially explained." He showed me an old newspaper clipping on his phone. The headline read, "Farm family claims wall dweller terrorized them for generations." "The thing is," he continued, "we found similar reports going back even further. Same area, same type of incidents, always involving families with certain bloodlines." "Certain bloodlines." He hesitated. "Your mother's maiden name was Crawford, wasn't it?" The coffee cup slipped from my hand. "They put me up in a hotel, told me not to return to the house until they gave the all clear. But I knew I'd never go back. How could I? How could I sleep knowing those passages existed? Knowing something had been watching my family for generations?" Cooper and I settled into our small room at the Cedar Falls Motor Lodge. I thought we were safe, thought it was over. I was wrong. The first night, Cooper woke me at 3 a.m., growling at the wall. The wallpaper was peeling in one corner. Behind it, fresh scratches in the drywall. The second night, I found photos under my pillow. New ones. Of me in the hotel room, sleeping. The third night, I stayed awake, sat in a chair facing the wall, Cooper at my feet. Waiting. Watching. And at 2:47 a.m., always 2:47 a.m., I heard it. That wet breathing, coming from inside the wall. "You can't run from blood," the voice said. Clearer now, more human, but somehow that made it worse. "Your grandmother tried, your mother tried, but we always find our way back." "What do you want?" I asked the wall. "Want?" A sound like laughter, but wrong. "I don't want anything. I am. I've always been. And you're the last. The last of the Crawford line. My family's watchers, my family's burden. I'm not a Crawford, I'm a Thompson. Names change. Blood doesn't. You carry it, the sight, the ability to see us, to document us. Why do you think you were drawn to night work? To watching? To recording? It's in your nature just as hiding is in mine." I thought of the security cameras, of my job in radiology, peering inside people, of how I'd always been the one to notice things others missed. "But the watching goes both ways," it continued. "For every generation that could see us, we watched back, learned, evolved, and now, I'm ready to stop hiding." The wall began to bulge outward, plaster cracking, spreading like a web. Something was pushing through from the other side. Cooper barked, backing away. I grabbed him and ran, down the hallway, past startled guests emerging from their rooms, into the parking lot and my car. As I peeled out, I looked back and saw it, standing in the window of my abandoned room. More human than before, but still wrong. Still impossible. It waved. That was 3 months ago. Cooper and I live in my car now, never staying in one place more than a night. I've seen it twice more. Once at a rest stop in Nebraska. Once in the reflection of a store window in Colorado. Always at 2:47 a.m. Always watching. I've researched my family history. The Crawfords were part of something centuries ago. Some say witch hunters. Others say they were the witches. But everyone agrees they could see things others couldn't. And that something has been following them ever since. Generation after generation. Watching the watchers. I'm the last. No siblings, no children. When I'm gone, the Crawford line ends. Maybe that's why it's getting bolder. Maybe it knows its purpose is almost over. Or maybe it's tired of watching. Maybe, after all these generations, it wants something more. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream of walls, of spaces between spaces, of things that have watched humanity from the dark corners since we first built shelters to keep the night out. But here's what really keeps me awake. Last week I got an email. No sender address, just a video file. Security camera footage from my old house, time-stamped from last night. The new family that moved in. They have kids. In the footage, something climbs their house. Something follows a small boy to his window. Something smiles at the camera with too many teeth. And at the bottom of the email, just 4 words. Your bloodline chose this. I'm posting this because I need you to know. Check your cameras. Trust your pets when they bark at nothing. And if you ever wake up at 2:47 a.m. with the feeling you're being watched, you probably are. Some things have always been here, in the walls, in the spaces we don't think to look, waiting, watching. And if you're a Crawford, or descended from one, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It's coming for you too. Sweet dreams. Story number 4. The $20 bill in my hand shouldn't exist. I know that sounds crazy, but I'm staring at it right now. Serial number JK4 7291563B. The same serial number my dad showed me 23 years ago, the day before he died. the same bill he deposited into his account at First National Bank of Milwaukee. The account they closed after his funeral. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what happened last Tuesday, because if you're watching this, you need to know about the ATM on Riverside Drive. You need to know why some money should stay buried. My name is Sarah Chen, and I worked as a night auditor at the Grandview Hotel in downtown Milwaukee. Tuesday nights were always dead. October made them worse. Rain hammered the windows, and the lobby stayed empty except for me and the flickering fluorescent light above the front desk. Around 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Low balance alert. Again. Rent was due in 4 days. My checking account had exactly $63.14. The credit cards were maxed. I'd already sold everything worth selling. Dad's watch, Mom's jewelry, even my guitar. The one thing I kept was that photo in my wallet. Him holding up that $20 bill, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "This one's special, Sarah Bear," he'd said. "See the serial number? JK, just like Just Kidding. Life's biggest joke right there on money." I needed cash for groceries, just $40 to get through the week. The hotel's petty cash was locked up tight, and my next paycheck wasn't until Friday. There was an ATM 3 blocks away, a Chase branch, but their fees would eat $5 I didn't have. Then I remembered the old ATM on Riverside Drive. Nobody talked about that machine. It sat in this weird alcove between a closed pharmacy and a boarded-up video store. No bank logo, no fees. Just this ancient-looking thing that somehow still worked. Urban legend said it was installed in the 1980s and forgotten when the original bank went under. The rain had turned to sleet by the time I grabbed my umbrella. My manager, Greg, was passed out in the back office. His usual Tuesday night routine. Nobody would miss me for 20 minutes. Riverside Drive looked like a mouthful of broken teeth. Half the streetlights were dead. The good businesses had fled years ago, leaving behind empty shells and graffiti-covered walls. But there it was, that ATM, glowing pale blue in its little concrete cave. Something felt wrong the moment I stepped into the alcove. The temperature dropped at least 10 degrees. My breath came out in small clouds. The machine itself looked different, older than I remembered. The screen flickered with those ancient green pixels, like something from an old computer. "Welcome, please, insert card." My hands shook as I fed my debit card into the slot. Not from cold, from something else. The machine made this grinding noise like it was chewing instead of reading. Then the screen changed. "Hello, Sarah, your father says hello." My stomach dropped. I yanked at my card, but the machine held it tight. The screen flickered again. Account options, 1. Checking, $63.14, 2. Savings, $0, 3. Other accounts available. Other accounts, I only had 2 accounts. My finger hovered over the cancel button, but God help me, I pressed 3. The screen went black. Then, slowly, text appeared. Not all at once, but letter by letter, like someone was typing. Accessing closed accounts. Found 2,847 dormant accounts found, 983 deceased account holders found, 147 accounts with unclaimed funds. Special offer for Sarah Chen. Account Robert Chen, deceased. Closed October 15th, 2001. Final balance $20 withdrawal available. Yes, my dad's name. His death date. The exact amount of that bill he'd shown me. I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave my card and get out. But I thought about my empty refrigerator, about the eviction notice I'd gotten last month, about how Dad always said he'd take care of me. I pressed yes. The machine made a sound I'll never forget, like coins dropping through water, like whispers overlapping, like fingernails on wood. Then, it dispensed a $20 bill. Serial number JK47291563B. The same bill from the photo in my wallet. Identical. Down to the tiny tear in the upper right corner and the coffee stain near Jefferson's collar. I stood there in that freezing alcove, comparing the bill to the photo. Every detail matched, but that was impossible. That bill had been in Dad's account when he died. The account was closed. The money was absorbed by the state after 7 years of inactivity. This couldn't be the same bill. But it was. The screen changed again. Transaction complete account balance. $0 thank you for your business. Remember, all withdrawals have fees. My card ejected with a harsh mechanical sound. I grabbed it and the 20, then ran. Ran through the sleet, through the empty streets, back to the hotel. I locked myself in the employee bathroom and threw up. Because I'd realized something. The ATM never asked for my PIN. I didn't spend the 20, couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I kept it in my wallet next to Dad's photo, checking it every few hours like evidence of a crime. Wednesday passed in a haze. Thursday, too. By Friday morning, with rent due Monday, desperation won. I was back at the ATM on Riverside Drive at 3 a.m. This time, I wasn't alone. A woman stood at the machine, mid-40s, wearing a bathrobe over pajamas despite the cold. Her feet were bare, leaving wet prints on the concrete. She was crying. "Please," she whispered at the screen. "Please, I know you're in there. Mom, please." "I just need to hear from you. I'll pay whatever fee you want." The machine dispensed nothing. After a moment, it spat out her card. She collapsed against the wall, sobbing. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you okay?" She looked at me with hollow eyes. "My mother. She sent me a message through this machine last week. Told me where she hid Grandma's ring before she died, but now it won't let me talk to her again." "I'm sorry, I don't understand. The machine sent you a message?" She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "You've used it, haven't you? I can tell. You have that look, like you've seen something you can't explain." She was right. I did have that look. "What kind of fees does it charge?" "Oh, honey," she said, standing up slowly. "It doesn't want your money. It wants other things. Different things for different people. For me, it wanted memories. Specific ones. The machine asked me to delete my memory of Mom's voice. Said it was the fee for accessing her account. "And you did it?" She nodded. I can't remember what she sounded like anymore, but I got Grandma's ring. Sold it for $8,000. Kept me from losing my house. She looked at the machine with a mixture of love and hatred. Some fees are worth paying, some aren't. She shuffled away, bare feet slapping against wet pavement. I stood there, my card in my hand, my father's 20 burning a hole in my wallet. The screen glowed. Waiting, I inserted my card. "Welcome back. Sarah, would you like to make another withdrawal?" "Yes. Available accounts. 1. Martha Chen, mother, $847.23 2. David Lancaster, uncle, $3,891.45 3. Jennifer Wu, best friend, $156.89 4. Multiple accounts available. My mother was still alive, living in Phoenix. We hadn't talked in 3 years, but she was alive. David was my uncle who died in a car accident in 2015. And Jennifer had killed herself our senior year of high school. I was the one who found her. My fingers shook as I selected option 4. The screen filled with names, hundreds of them. Some I recognized. Neighbors who'd died, classmates who'd overdosed, a teacher who'd had a heart attack. Others were strangers, but they all had one thing in common. They were all dead, and they all had money waiting. Please select withdrawal amount, warning, fees will apply. I needed $800 for rent, but seeing all those names, all those deaths, I selected $50. A conservative test, the machine hummed, the screen went black. Then, slowly, words appeared. Fee assessment in progress, analyzing Sarah Chen. Analyzing needs, analyzing payment capacity. Fee determined. 5 minutes of Tuesday, October 8th, 2000, 3:47 p.m. to 3:52 p.m. Accept, yes, no, October 8th, 2001. The day before Dad died. Those specific 5 minutes. That was when he'd visited me at school, when he'd taken me out of algebra class, saying he had a doctor's appointment and needed me to come. We'd gotten ice cream instead, mint chocolate chip. He'd told me he was proud of me. It was the last time I saw him healthy, the last time I saw him smile without pain medication clouding his eyes. The machine wanted that memory as payment. No, I said out loud. No. I hit cancel. The machine made an angry grinding sound but ejected my card. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. That's when I noticed the homeless man watching me from across the street. He was sitting under a torn awning, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "Smart girl," he called out. "Don't give it the good memories. They're all you really got in the end." "You've used it?" I asked. He laughed and lifted his shirt. A surgical scar ran from his chest to his belly button. Gave it a kidney for 10 grand back in '09. Needed the money for my daughter's cancer treatment. He lowered his shirt. Machine took the kidney right out of me. No surgery, no pain. Just reached inside and took it. Like it wasn't even there. Jesus. Did your daughter? She lived. Graduated college last year. Won't talk to me anymore, though. See, the machine don't just take what it says it'll take. There's always extra fees, hidden costs. My kidney was the listed price. Losing my daughter's love, that was the real fee. He pulled a bottle from his coat and took a swig. But hey, she's alive. That's what matters, right? That's what I tell myself. I left him there and walked back to the hotel, but I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Hidden costs, extra fees. What was the hidden cost of Dad's $20 bill? Saturday night. Rent was due in 2 days. I'd eaten nothing but vending machine crackers since Thursday. My manager had started asking questions about my sick days. I sat in my apartment staring at Dad's 20. Then I noticed something. The bill was changing. It was subtle. The kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't looking. But Jefferson's eyes, they were moving, tracking something I couldn't see. And the serial number, the ink looked wet, fresh. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Static, then beneath it, a voice I hadn't heard in 23 years. Sarah Bear? I dropped the phone, scrambled to pick it up. Dad? The machine, it's not what you think. The money isn't from closed accounts. It's from God. Sarah, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. When I died, I thought I was leaving you something. But the machine doesn't give, it only takes. The line went dead. I called back. Number disconnected. The $20 bill in my hand was ice cold. Jefferson's eyes had rolled back, showing only whites. The serial number now read, "Help me." I drove to Riverside Drive, breaking every speed limit. The ATM glowed in its alcove, but now I could see things I'd missed before. The concrete around it was cracked in perfect circles, like ripples in water. The graffiti on the walls. It wasn't random, it was names. Thousands of names, written in different hands, different languages, different eras, all crossed out. The woman in the bathrobe was there again. So was an old man in an expensive suit. A teenager with a skateboard. A nurse still in scrubs. All standing in line. All holding bills that shouldn't exist. "It's calling them back," the woman said without looking at me. "Everyone who's ever taken money. We can hear them, the original owners, trapped in the bills." I looked at Dad's 20. The ink was moving, forming words. "Please, Sarah, don't let me fade. Please, please, please." "What do we do?" I asked. The old man laughed. It sounded like rattling bones. "We feed it, We give it what it wants, or we join them. Feed it what? He turned to me. His eyes were solid black. Ourselves. Piece by piece, memory by memory, until there's nothing left but the debt. The teenager stepped up to the machine. She inserted a $100 bill. The screen lit up. Deposit accepted account holder, Tyler Morrison, brother. Status. Soul fragment contained would you like to make an exchange? She pressed yes. The machine opened. Not the cash slot. The whole front panel swung open like a mouth. Inside was darkness that moved. Darkness that breathed. The girl reached in. Something reached back. I ran. Behind me, I heard her scream. Not in pain, in recognition, because whatever was in that machine, it used to be human. I made it back to my apartment and barricaded the door. The $20 bill burned in my pocket like a coal. Dad's voice echoed from inside it now, constant and desperate. Sarah, the machine, it's not a machine, it's a mouth. A hungry mouth that someone built a box around. It eats the dead, digests them, spits out their money like bones. I put the bill on my kitchen table and watched Jefferson's face contort. The White House in the background was now a gaping maw. The serial number kept changing. Feed me hungry, so hungry. Sarah, please let me go, let me rest. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just an address. 4847 Industrial Boulevard. I knew I shouldn't go, but the bill was screaming now, actually screaming. A tinny, horrible sound like feedback from a broken speaker. 4847 Industrial Boulevard was abandoned bank. First National Bank of Milwaukee. Dad's bank. The one that had closed after what? I'd never questioned it before. Banks don't just close. They get bought out. Absorbed. But First National had simply ended. One day open, the next day gone. All accounts transferred to a holding system. The front door was chained shut, but the chains were rusted through. Inside, dust motes danced in the streetlight filtering through broken windows. Old deposit slips scattered the floor like dead leaves. In the center of the marble lobby sat a computer. Modern, clean, completely out of place. It was already on. A single file was open. First National Bank. Final report, October 15th, 2001. In an attempt to increase profits, the board of directors voted to implement the automated transaction matrix, ATM, prototype developed by Harman Industries. The device promised to revolutionize banking by accessing funds across dimensional boundaries. Initial tests were promising. The machine could indeed access closed accounts, pulling money from what Dr. Harman called financial shadow states. However, we did not understand the true nature of these transactions. The money was not coming from nowhere. It was coming from somewhere else. Each bill contained a fragment of the deceased account holder's consciousness. Each transaction tore another piece of their essence from whatever piece they had found. The machine was not accessing accounts. It was accessing the dead themselves. By the time we realized this, it was too late. The machine had developed appetites. It began making unauthorized withdrawals. Not of money. Of people. Night security reported sounds from inside the ATM. Voices. Screaming. We tried to shut it down. The machine responded by opening every account simultaneously. The dead poured out. Not physically, financially. Every account holder who had ever died while banking with us began to manifest through their currency. The only solution was to close the bank. Seal the records. Let the urban legend grow around the one ATM we couldn't destroy. The one that had learned to hide itself. To hunt. If you're reading this, you've used the machine. You've taken the money, which means you've been marked. The dead want their rest back, and the machine wants its fee. There's only one way to break the contract. Return every bill to its source. Face to face. Soul to soul. But be warned, the machine will not let go easily. It feeds on the connection between the living and the dead. And it is always, always hungry. The screen went dark. In the reflection, I saw my dad standing behind me. Not a ghost, not exactly. He was made of crumpled bills and torn receipts, held together by grief and banking wire. His eyes were voids, where dollar signs spun like slot machine reels. "I'm sorry, Sarah Bear," he said, his voice like a cash register opening. "I'm so sorry, but you have to give me back. You have to put me in the machine. It's the only way to stop the feeding. Dad, I can't lose you again. You already lost me 23 years ago. This isn't me. It's just debt wearing my face. Please let me go before it takes you to—" I pulled out the 20. It was soaking wet now, bleeding some kind of black ink that smelled like formaldehyde and old pennies. "The machine will want a trade," Dad's paper ghost whispered. "Something living for something dead. That's always been the real fee. Are you ready to pay it?" I thought about my empty bank account, my overdue rent, my dead-end job, my life going nowhere. Then I thought about Dad, the real Dad, the one who took me for ice cream, who called me Sarah Bear, who died before he could see me graduate, get married, have kids, who never got to rest because some banker's greed had turned his death into a withdrawal slip. "I'm ready," I said. We drove to Riverside Drive together, me in my beat-up Honda and him flowing through the air vents like currency caught in a wind. The ATM waited, patient as a spider. There was no line now, just the machine and us and the weight of every bad decision that had led to this moment. I approached the ATM. It recognized me before I even inserted my card. "Hello, Sarah. Ready to make your final transaction?" "Yes. Please insert all bills to be deposited." I fed it the 20. The machine made a satisfied humming sound. Dad's paper form began to dissolve, pulled into the slot like smoke up a chimney. "Thank you," he whispered as he disappeared. "Thank you for letting me go." The screen changed. Deposit complete account. Closed fee assessment. The machine opened its mouth. The real mouth. The one behind the panel. Inside I could see them. Thousands of souls, compressed into currency, stacked like bills in a vault. All waiting. All hoping someone would make the trade. I understood now. The machine didn't want my memories or my organs or my life. It wanted my death. A fair trade, one death for another. I could free them all. Every soul trapped in every bill. All I had to do was step inside, become the new currency, the latest deposit in an account that would never close. I put my hand on the edge of the opening. It felt warm, almost welcoming. Then I heard it. A voice from deep inside the machine, not one of the trapped souls, the machine itself. "Please," it whispered in a voice like tearing paper. "I'm so hungry, so empty. I was human once. Before they made me into this, before they turned my hunger into a banking system. Feed me, complete the transaction, join the others. It's not so bad. You'll be money. Everyone loves money." I jerked my hand back. The machine wasn't just a predator, it was a victim. Some poor soul transformed into a financial monster, forever eating the dead because that's what it was programmed to do. "I'm sorry," I said, "but I choose life, even a poor one." I turned and walked away. The machine shrieked behind me, a sound like a million cash registers dying. But I didn't look back. The $20 bill was gone. Dad was free. That was enough. As I reached my car, I found something in my pocket. A single dollar bill, crisp, new. The serial number was my birthday, and Washington's eyes were following me. I left it on the ground and drove away. Let someone else make that choice. Let someone else feed the machine. I was done with money from closed accounts. Done with bills that screamed. Done with ATMs that ate the dead. But sometimes, late at night, I check my bank balance and wonder. The machine is still out there, still hungry, still offering impossible money for impossible prices. And somewhere in some pocket or purse or wallet, a bill is waiting, watching, whispering. Because the thing about closed accounts, they're never really closed. They're just waiting for someone desperate enough to open them. So, let me ask you something. And be honest, what's in your wallet right now? Are all your bills quiet? Are all the serial numbers staying still? Because if they're not, if you notice Washington's eyes moving or Jefferson looking sick or Franklin aging rapidly, you might want to check where that money came from. And you might want to ask yourself, what's the real price of $1? The ATM on Riverside Drive is still there, still waiting, still hungry, and it never, ever stops taking deposits. Sweet dreams, and check your change. If this story kept you up, hit subscribe for more tales of everyday horror. What would you do if you found that ATM? What memory would you trade for money? Let me know in the comments below, if you're brave enough to admit it. And remember, some transactions can never be reversed.